A row of American flags in front of unmarked graves in the African American section of the Vicksburg National Cemetery. The title of the video appears, Say Their Name, honoring the victims of the massacre at Ross's Landing. In February 1864, members of a Confederate guerrilla unit attacked soldiers of the U.S. 1st Mississippi Infantry African descent who were on a foraging detail at Ross's Landing, Arkansas. 16 black soldiers and their 2 white officers were murdered. There were only 2 survivors. The African American soldiers were eventually buried in unmarked graves at Vicksburg National Cemetery, and the story of the Ross's Landing Massacre faded from history. Today, Vicksburg National Military Park restores their names and honors their sacrifice. A middle-aged black woman wearing a tan suit speaks at a podium on a stage in the front of an auditorium. A picture of flags marking graves at the Vicksburg National Cemetery is on the projector, and a green plant sits on a small table next to her. A title appears on the screen saying, Thelma Sims Dukes, Historian, William Bill Sims Foundation.
The 1st Mississippi Infantry Company chief was ordered to Ross Landing, Chicot County, Arkansas, to forage. On February the 14th, 1864, they were surprised by an unsanctioned 9th Missouri Cavalry band of 21 Confederate soldiers.
A black and white photo of a group of black soldiers wearing Union uniforms and holding tall muskets standing in a row. Caption reads, Company E, 4th U.S. Colored Infantry.
The Africans were equipped with one-shot muzzleloaders. They stood ready in line when the Confederates turned the corner of the gin house.
A black and white photo of 2 black Union soldiers firing rifles around the corner of a building. One of the men is using a water barrel as a gun rest. Caption reads, Picket Station of Colored Troops near Dutch Gap, Virginia.
They fired 1 round. There was no time to reload. The Africans tried to retreat, but the mounted guerrillas continued shooting with their Colt, Navy, and dragoon revolvers, and they overwhelmed them. The guerrilla unit, not satisfied with shooting the Africans in the back, dismounted, grabbed the Africans' rifles with bayonets, and pinned each African soldier to the ground. When the rest of Company G arrived, they buried 13 African soldiers and brought back to Vicksburg 7 wounded soldiers, including the 2 white officers.
A black and white photo of a metal gate and a white stone arch marking the entrance to a cemetery. Caption reads, Entrance to Vicksburg National Cemetery.
After the Vicksburg National Cemetery was established in 1866, the 13 original soldiers buried in Arkansas were moved to the Vicksburg National Cemetery.
A black and white photo of rows of graves marked with small stone blocks on a terraced hill. Caption reads, Vicksburg National Cemetery, Terraces.
And the segregated them section as unknowns.
A black and white photo of a group of black soldiers in Union uniforms standing next to a hole in the ground. A casket and several bodies wrapped in cloth lie on the ground next to it. Caption reads, Union dead ready for burial in Fredericksburg, Virginia.
The 3 who died of their wounds in the hospital were also buried as unknown.
A middle-aged white man wearing a National Park Service uniform of green pants, a gray long-sleeve shirt, and a tie speaks at the podium. A title appears on the screen saying, John Schweigart, Chief Archaeologist, Vicksburg National Military Park.
These individuals were bare. Their identities were equally bare. But they have come back.
A middle-aged white man wearing a National Park Service uniform and green pants and a gray short-sleeve shirt speaks at the podium. A title appears on the screen saying, Brendan Wilson, Chief of Interpretation, Vicksburg National Military Park.
And when we tell these stories, we're doing something more than just honoring their deaths. Because if we all take a moment to think about our loved ones, about ourselves, when we define who we are, we're not fully defining ourselves by our moments of death, but it's how we lived. And so today, we're not only honoring that these men made the ultimate sacrifice in the fight for freedom, we're also celebrating these men's lives and what they did
while they were alive.
A middle-aged black man in a gray suit speaks in front of the plant on the table next to the podium. A title appears on the screen saying, Dr. Albert Dorsey, Jr., Assistant History Professor, Jackson State University.
As I pour out the water of libation in remembrance of all the United States colored troops, after each name, I want you to say Ashe, a West African Yoruba word that means so be it. Ashe?
Dr. Dorsey lifts a jug of water, and as he says each soldier's name, he pours a libation of water into the plant while the soldier's name appears on the screen.
Private Henry Berry. Private Calvin Cathrone. Private T. Howard Dixon. Corporal Fleming Epps. Private Ruffian Epps. Private Peter Everman. Private Charles Ferrar. Private Henry Ford. Private John Jennifer. Private Anthony Gibbons. Private Richard James. Sergeant Tony McGee. Sergeant Noah Howell. Private Thomas Ransom. First Sergeant James Spencer. Private Isaac Stanton. Private Isom Taylor. Corporal Nelson Walker. Private James H. Bolden.
A 20th name appears on the screen, First Lieutenant Thaddeus Cock. A middle-aged white woman wearing a black top and white and black striped pants speaks from behind the podium. A title appears on the screen, Dr. Beth Cruz, Mellon Humanities Fellow, Vicksburg National Military Park.
So now, 160 years later, we can acknowledge the victims of Ross's Landing. And as President Lincoln remarks of the Gettysburg Dead, we too can recognize the men who lay the hallowed grounds of the Vicksburg National Cemetery and never forget what they did for freedom.
Closing credits. Beneath the National Park Service Arrowhead logo, it says, Special thanks to Vicksburg National Military Park, William Bill Sims Foundation, National Park Foundation, Mellon Foundation, www.nps.gov/vic.